You know, it happens every year just about this time. I start getting some emails and some calls with questions like this. How do I handle my conflict with a college roommate? Or maybe a parent is calling me and they're like,
Oh my gosh, my kid has an absolute nutso as a roommate.
how do we handle this situation? So, we're a few weeks into school, and if you are already struggling to comprehend how you will ever survive your new roommate's obsession with, I don't know, picking their nose or leaving their dirty underwear all over the room, or maybe insisting that quiet time begins at 9 p.m., well, then this video is for you because today I'm going to share with you the most important tips on how to handle conflicts with your college roommate. Now, if you follow these, you may not become BFFs with your roommate, but I suspect this will increase the likelihood that you will make it through the year without driving each other crazy. And you know what? Even if these tips don't work, because at some fundamental level, we can't fully change other people, if you lean into these approaches, I'll guarantee it will be a win for you because you'll chalk up a giant personal win in your journey from high school to college independence, and you'll pick up some really important skills for dealing with differences beyond just your college roommate. Plus, if you stick around, I'm going to share an embarrassing story of my own experience in college that sadly exemplifies one of the most common and yet truly worst strategies to use when dealing with roommate conflict. I'm Bob Bordone. I'm a senior fellow at Harvard Law School. I'm the founder and former director of Harvard Law School's Negotiation and Mediation clinical program. And today we are dealing with all things college roommate nightmare. Okay, so your college roommate has already acquired a significant other who's decided to move in, and it's a problem. Or maybe you don't think the entire room needs to be sanitized every 15 minutes. Or maybe you're on the other spectrum and you think like it should be sanitized at least once in 3 weeks. Wherever you are in this conflict with your roommate, I think there are a number of things you want to be cautious of. One common thing, one common dynamic that I've heard is people who say something like, I'll get used to it, or it will get better. Avoidance moves like this typically don't work. It typically doesn't get better. It gets worse. Another thing, though, people do is they say, well, I'm just going to arrange my schedule so I'm never in the room when my roommate is there. Now, quite apart from how inconvenient that is, it also usually doesn't make things better. It actually just keeps high levels of stress throughout the entire year. Now, a third thing sometimes people do is they say, like, you know what, I'm just going to move out. So all of these, if these are going through your mind, I'm completely sympathetic with you. Maybe you've already made some steps in this direction, but I want to give you some advice that I think could actually really address the situation head on. And it's not easy, but it's doable. And the most important thing is really setting up a time to meet with your roommate or roommates to discuss how things are going from each of your perspectives, and then to problem solve. Now, if you're like I was in college, life is really busy, and finding time to all get together is challenging. But it's also possible. Maybe it's a weekend, maybe it's a late night session. But one of the things you want to make sure you don't do is react in a moment. So, your roommate's a real mess and they leave something in the kitchen, and the second you see it, you blow up at them. That's not a good moment for a conversation. Instead, reaching out and schedule something. Now, once you have something scheduled, you need to do some preparation. So, a few things I want to suggest. First, for yourself, make a list of some of the specific behaviors that you find upsetting or bothersome. But also, and this may be hard, try to make a list of some of the behaviors that you may do or that you may fail to do that you think other people might find annoying. Then, looking at those list of behaviors, the ones that the roommate does, consider what are the emotions that come up for you when they do those behaviors. And then write down what might be the emotions that come up for your roommate when you do the behaviors that are bothersome to them. My guess is that there's a real commonality there, right? Frustration, anger, maybe sometimes indifference, maybe there's some eye rolling. So, an observation I want to make is that even if you are very different from your roommate, you probably have some real shared emotions around the experience of living with each other. And chances are they're somewhere between neutral and negative. And so, part of the task of this conversation, even if you're not going to line up on your living style preferences, is can we shift some of those emotions from negative to positive? So, when you begin the conversation, you want to start by just appreciating their willingness to talk. And then you want to be able to say that there are a number of dynamics that have been challenging for you and hard for you. And you want to describe each behavior and how it makes you feel. So this is really important. You are not evaluating the behavior. You are not saying things like normal civilized human beings would never do this. Instead, you're simply noting the behaviors and saying, this has been challenging and this has been hard. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could talk about this so that we can shift this and it could be easier for me. Why am I suggesting this, right? Because the second thing you're doing there is you're giving them a positive role. Their role is a helper to make your life a little bit better, which is very different from saying to them that you're a complete slob and were you raised by apes. But it doesn't end there. Once you've done this, you have to ask for what is their reaction. And this piece can be really hard because they may not agree with you. The point of this conversation is in no way to reach an agreement about what a normal roommate situation should be, what is appropriate. All you're trying to work out is how the 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 of you can live with each other. And so that also means asking them what their experience has been living with you. Now, they may not have seen this video, right? They may tell you things like no one ever does X or what kind of a strange person does Y. You are going to be tempted to say, well, this is normal, or this is what we did in my family, or this is what like everyone else down the hall is doing. Avoid that temptation. Instead, listen to them and simply say, okay, so we have some differences here. How can we find a way to live with each other as comfortably as possible? And this is really then the next phase of this conversation, which is brainstorming options, brainstorming ideas that each of you might be willing to do to make life with the other person a bit better. So let's hope that this produces some ideas and might be a little bit uncomfortable. Before the conversation ends, I want to suggest that it's really important to leave by saying, can we set up another check-in 10 days from now, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, just to see how we're all doing? The reason why I'm suggesting this is because if you announce that you want to do this now, then in 2 to 3 weeks when you set up the meeting, it will not feel like something has gone wrong. On the other hand, if you don't build in that check-in and things aren't going well, and then you set up the meeting to talk again, it's going to feel like something has gone off the rails. Okay, so before we end here, I want to share a few strategies that sometimes people use that I think can really backfire. The first, right, is somebody who, for whatever set of reasons, doesn't really raise things with their roommate and simply goes to the university housing office and asks to change their rooms. Now, first, it's really hard in many university contexts to just say, I'm not getting along with my roommate, I want to change rooms. But second, even if that is easy, I want to suggest to you that you've missed a real opportunity here. Because in life, we are going to sometimes be working with people and living with people that we don't like that much, who have different styles and preferences, and simply asking someone to make it go away often just won't work. So this is a real opportunity to build some real conflict resolution skills. Now, the second thing people do, and this is where my embarrassing story comes in, is that they engage in just passive aggressive behavior as a way to punish their roommate or as a way to show their displeasure, in the hope that somehow the roommate will modify their behavior. So way back when I was in college many years ago, in my junior year, I spent my fall semester studying in Washington, D.C., and so I came back my spring semester, and instead of being able to pick a roommate, I simply was assigned a roommate. And let's just say we had radically different styles. So this is going to date me a little bit, but this was before the age of cell phones. So the only way you could talk was on a land-based phone, presumably in your college dorm room. And so on a Friday or Saturday night, I would go out with my friends, and my roommate would go out with his friends, and I would come home 1:30, 2 in the morning, and be pretty exhausted and go to bed. And he would come in at 3 in the morning, which is totally fine, except then he would pick up the phone and call his friends in California. I was on the East Coast, so it was only midnight for those friends. And he would start talking in the loudest and most raucous voice, making it impossible for me to sleep. So, what did I do? Did I have a conversation with him? No. Instead, I started to come in at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, and I would disconnect the phone from the wire, the headset, and I would go to bed and put the phone under my pillow. Therefore, when he came in, he could not actually call the roommates. Now, this was effective insofar as I was able to get my sleep, but it was incredibly immature and actually really made our already tenuous relationship poisonous. So, for you, I hope you will not do this, right? My experience working with law students through the years, both at Harvard and at Georgetown, is that the most successful of these people, most successful leaders, are the ones who, in their college days, took opportunities like challenging roommate situations and used them as a way to lean into difficult conversations and as a way to really build conflict resolution skills. So I will encourage you to try these strategies. I think it's a real opportunity, even if it's a bit of a challenge. Of course, if you want to keep on building your skills of conflict resolution, watch this next video where I draw out some key negotiation lessons from one of my most favorite pandemic Netflix series, Schitt's Creek. Also, I'd be incredibly grateful to you if you would like this video, ring the bell, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm Bob Bordone, and let's keep negotiating together.